Hello and welcome to this very special edition of the Kerfuffle Podcast. Today, I don't have my usual co-presenter, Simon Whale, but I do have a star-studded lineup that comprises one gentleman who should be enough for all of you. It is none other than Mr. Peter Knight. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm excellent, David. Thank you very much indeed. And it's great to be actually only with the real star of the Kerfuffle Podcast. That other bloke. I mean, what can we say about him?
That is so true. He's busy hobnobbing this morning, I think, at the Guild conference. So he's doing the rounds, and you and I are here to talk about recent news, which is fantastic. So I want to congratulate you on one hand and sort of say the news headlines that we saw this week in Property Industry Eye that the EA Masters this year will be working in conjunction with On the Market rather than your previous partners, which were Rightmove. It sounds fabulous. Perhaps some of the headlines were a little bit unkind to one or two people in terms of the way that it was phrased, but we're here to ask, what does it actually mean for the agents that were part of EA Masters previously and going forward? Because there are some obvious questions, because like it or not, the EA Masters is the industry standard of industry standards. And a lot of the judging criteria was previously reliant on Rightmove's data. They have, I think it's fair to say, the majority of the agents on the market. And there may be concerns that On the Market as your new partner won't have the same sort of data sets. So how does that work?
Okay, so David, thanks for this opportunity, and it's great to be able to put a few of those well, to answer your questions, and also to be able to put some of those issues fairly and squarely where they belong. So first and foremost, when we were with Rightmove for the last couple of decades, we've worked with Rightmove, and they still remain firm friends of EA Masters, and for that matter, Property Academy and our other brands. The data we had was from Rightmove, which in itself was quite controversial for some agents. They felt uncomfortable that their data, as they see it, is being used by Rightmove and then passed to us. And in many respects, what was being given to us was quite limiting. Rightmove basically aggregated various criteria and gave each branch and then each brand a score, and we just got the score. Now, the big thing I need to get straight here is this: we're not using On the Market data in the same way that we use Rightmove data. We're actually using we've got 470 different sources of data, and in simple terms, every single property listing for lets or to sale is going to be assessed. Everyone. So if you think about Rightmove in terms of, I mean, clearly Rightmove is by far and away the largest portal with the largest market share. There's no argument about that, right? We can talk about, and people will talk about, the different qualities of leads that they get and various other things. But when it comes to sheer size, there's no question that Rightmove is far and head and shoulders above everybody else in that space. Which is why, if you're going to go to a single source of data, they would be the obvious ones to go with, as we did. But now we're going with multiple sources of data. So every listing on Rightmove, every listing on Zoopla, every listing on the Market, every listing on every portal, and for that matter on the internet, will be included. So whereas before we said we were substantially whole of market, we could, well, I suppose the nitpicker will say, well, what about those properties that don't go onto the internet? Fair enough. We're not able to assess those ones. So anything that's sold or let without appearing online, no, we don't have a way of tracking that, but we will be tracking every single listing.
That is a huge undertaking in terms of combing through that data, because, you know, even your previous assessment criteria, it was unfeasible to say that you would mystery shop every single agent out there. So you were able to narrow it down already using the sort of Rightmove weighting to get it down to a short list, as it were. But now you're going after every single listing on the market. Have you got a laboratory full of sort of data scientists working on this full time? This is massive.
Well, in effect, yes, we have, David. Not in my employment. We outsource, and we will be announcing shortly who our partners are in this respect. And I'm afraid, I wish I could, and I'll let you know as soon as I can. But we've basically got an agreement to, and we're using all sorts of things, whether it be Experian and all sorts of different methodologies, and obviously linking with land registry to be able to check whether properties actually went through to completion or not. It's a wealth of data, and it's an upgrade. It's a substantial upgrade. And what it means is that we're able to truly be the only assessment that is absolutely 90x% of market, apart from those that are sold offline. And that I'm really excited about. So we're raising the bar, and we're actually increasing the number of criteria that we use. And again, we will be publishing this very, very shortly, what all the criteria is, so that agents can see for themselves how we go about it. And what that will enable us to also do is to share. So previously, and understandably for confidentiality reasons, Rightmove were unable to give us sort of some of the criteria. So they couldn't say, for example, that agent X converted more sales in a time frame compared to agent Y. They just gave it a mark. We're now going to be able to have the actual data, precise data, to be able to say, okay, in St Albans, agent X managed to basically list and sell within 14 days. Agent Y does it in 10 days. And we're going to have criteria, over 50 different sets of criteria that we will be assessing. And again, we will be publishing what they are, so people can see for themselves exactly the measures that we use. And in that respect, David, the measurements are not based on us just sort of dreaming them up, or indeed even just consulting with agents, although we do consult with agents. It's much more to do with what the consumer wants, what the home mover wants. So you know that we carry out the home moving trend survey, which we've done for 15 years now. On average, 30,000 home movers each year take part in that survey. And we ask them what's important to them about selling or letting their property. And it's their answers that determine the criteria that we then measure. And that's what we're based on. By the way, we're still going to be having the mystery shop, and we're going to continue with the new initiative for last year, which was the web assessment, where we analysed 2,500 different estate agent websites against a wealth of criteria that, again, the consumer tells us is important. In simple terms, how well do they market properties? Because that's what home movers care about,
Well, that if there was any criticism of the EA Masters previously, and usually it was a mixture of sour grapes. If I'm honest, I might have once been included in that category, but I think if there was a criticism, it was that it didn't tell you how quickly they sold a property. It didn't tell you what percentage over asking these agents were achieving. And so there were missed bits of criteria that we felt as agents made us a substantially better agent for that area than perhaps others. So is there a sense here, Peter, that this now opens the EA Masters up to more agents to compete, but also perhaps smaller entities? Because the largest driving forces in the market, the usual names that turn up at every conference season and every award ceremony, we know who those names are, and rightly so. They invest a lot in training, they invest a lot in their marketing and websites and so on, and you would expect them to always be in the Premier League as it was. But will this now open this up to more independent players out there as well?
Yeah, I mean, to be direct, David, that it always was open to those that were on Rightmove, and those who weren't on Rightmove could apply. Now, the numbers that applied were relatively small, and in fact, it was a big ask for them because they had to supply us independently with data and have that verified. So typically, they had to get it verified off another portal or some other means that would pass the scrutiny in terms of the data. So it was quite a lot of work for those who weren't on Rightmove. Now it's portal neutral. So on the market are our principal partners for both EA Masters and also for the Best Estate Agent Guide and Awards. And we're absolutely thrilled to bits to have them as our principal partners. But they are not supplying us directly with any data in the way that Rightmove did. However, every property that is on on the market. Crikey, that's a tongue twister. Every property that
You're going to have to get used to that.
I know. Every property that is on OTM is automatically included in the assessment, as is every property on Zoopla, as is every property on Rightmove. And again, using a raft of different tools, most of which I'm hoping we will be able to announce and say, this is what we're using. We just want to be as transparent as we possibly can, David. And because one of the criticisms is, or has been misplaced, I feel, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not. It couldn't be more transparent. But you and others will test me on this and hold me accountable to this when we publish exactly our methodology, how we're going about it, what we're doing, and so on. And we do this because, yes, if we've missed something, or if there's an improvement, and by the way, every year that we've done this, there have been iteration after iteration. I mean, I hate to think what version we're on. We've given up counting, quite frankly. But every year we have a comprehensive review, including many agents taking part in that review process, to say, okay, what worked well, what went wrong, even better if. And that's our review process for everything. www.ebi. We do that for absolutely everything we do. What went well, what went wrong, even better if. And we will adapt and change and improve. And our goal is to get it as close to the ultimate assessment as we can. But inevitably, some agents will say, oh, well, you don't do this or you don't do the other. We had one that said, I only specialize in waterfront properties, and I'm being compared against those who also do properties inland. Okay, we don't go that granular.
It's hard to level the playing field, isn't it? And I think we're blessed with diversity of marketplaces, but also the agents that service those markets in the UK. Moving to perhaps a more cynical line of questioning, if we can have an uncomfortable chat for a couple of minutes. Listen, you want cynical questions, go to the comment section at Property Industry Eye. There's loads of them in there. But for people that a crude question would be, does the switching of partners come down to money? And I don't expect you to answer that outright. But what I did pick up on is that OTM on the market have gone through a bit of a renaissance, if you like, in the last couple of years under its new leadership with Jason Tebb. There seems to be a lot more positivity coming out of there, and the agent's response seemed to be pretty good. But one of the things I picked up on in the articles was that the values of OTM and EA Masters were quite closely aligned. So how do you address the more cynical view, and what does OTM bring to the table?
Okay, so I am in business, and of course you can't. There's an old saying: no profit, no purpose. And so you need to make a profit to be able to pursue your purpose. So what's this? What is this all about? And so how it all started, crikey, 20 plus years ago, was I was sitting at my desk, and in those days, that at lunchtime, that's when I used to go through my posts. And those of you old enough will remember when we had letters and things like that. So I had a sort of pile of posts that I was going through. And included in that pile of posts was an invitation to attend a House Builder of the Year Awards. And I already had 3 different House Builder of the Year Awards in my diary. We did a lot of work in the new home space at that time, still do. And anyway, long story short, I thought to myself, as I was eating my sandwich and I got this invitation, I went, crikey, I've never been invited to an Estate Agency of the Year Awards. So Google's in its infancy. I can't remember whether I Googled it or Yahoo'd it or whatever tool I was using at that point.
You may even have got a copy of the Yellow Pages out.
Well, I may well have done. Either way, there wasn't one. In fact, there had been one by the Nationwide some years previously in partnership with the NAA, but that went tits up. And so there was nobody was in that space at all. So I'd love to pretend that, I'm this great strategist and so on, but it would be complete bullshit. The reality is, whilst chewing a sandwich and looking at this, I came up with the idea. And the reason for it was we were working with a lot of estate agents at that time. And I knew then, as I know now, that they contribute so much, not only to their own industry, but to their communities and to society generally. And I was fed up reading in the mainstream media, the Daily Mail, etc., about rogue agents this and ripping people off that and all the usual nonsense that gets talked about. And I felt, you know what? We need to put something in place to enable the best agents to have a platform on which they can show off their achievements and proudly be proud to be a part of this industry. That was my driver then. It remains one of the three main tenets of why we do this now. So over a period of time, we're working with various partners, including Whaley and many others who've contributed to our rationale. We ended up with three key pillars, as it were. So number one, yes, was this opportunity to reward the good, to enable the best agents to be able to say, look, I've been assessed against everybody else, and against this criteria, I'm coming out head and shoulders above. And we don't. We promote the best. That's what we do. So we've got that as a pillar. The second pillar is to give the consumers a useful guide. I mean, nothing is 100% definitive, but it's a useful indicator. You go to the off license, not that you would, but your co-partner might, and you see two bottles of Malbec, both at 15 quid. One's got a medal on it, one hasn't. Which one are you going to purchase? All right. I mean, if you're a Malbec buff, then fair dues, but it's an endorsement, and it's an endorsement that hopefully adds value. So we wanted to give the consumer something that was helpful. But the third pillar is to help to raise the standards in the industry and to provide an incentive and a reward for it. So that was our starting point. So on the market, I believe, share those values. I'm not saying that Rightmove don't, but I feel that with on the market, what you've got is a challenger portal that is doing some different things. And you rightly highlight Jason Tebb, having taken over there as chief executive, I think has completely redirected the business. And it's quite clear that their positioning is to be the agent's portal. That's their positioning. And it's a bit similar to, I liken it to an iPhone. A friend of mine's got a 15-year-old teenager, and I actually asked her, does she ever, I said, do you ever use your iPhone as a phone? And she goes, and she scrolled through, and her phone is on page 5 of her apps.
Right.
and I use this analogy to say that if on the market is almost a sort of, if the phone is the portal piece, right? So in other words, if that was the analogy that it was the portal piece. On the market is not trying to say, hey, we're bigger or better than Rightmove. They might have done in their first guise, but they're not attempting to say that now. What they're saying is, we're going to provide agents with a suite of services, a whole raft of products, which agents will find really, really helpful and useful. We're going to be a net effectively, they're going to save agents money, right, in terms of providing these things. So, for example, they've got things like the SPRIF reports for free, as an example.
Yeah.
So that. Oh, and by the way, we are also a portal, and we will provide you with leads. And another analogy I use, David, is if Rightmove is the BBC, then on the market could be Channel 4, for example. They have to be different. They have to offer something else other than what the main market leader offers. But there's plenty of space for that. And I think a combination of the making properties available exclusively first for 24, 48 hours, which I think is a clever feature for them, and for agents who choose to use that tactically. So that's a fact thing, combined with all of their apps there. So I've known Jason a long time. I coached him for a period when he was at LSL, and he was a regional director, and know him and watched him set up Ivygate and build that business. So I've known Jason for quite a few years, and I know for a fact that he absolutely believes in an estate agency in all its guises, and is there to champion the independent agents, as he has been himself, and to help them to perform to the best of their ability. So we share a lot of the same values. And as a consequence, this partnership is not just commercial. Of course, there's a commercial element to it, but it's not just commercial. It's more to do with what On the Market will do to help to promote the EA Masters event and the Best Estate Agent Guide and Awards. And again, we'll be announcing very shortly exactly what benefits will be included. And they are very, very considerable. Agents are going to have the opportunity, if they choose to promote their success extensively across the On the Market platform in a way that they were not able to previously with Rightmove. So,
in some senses, I think that there is a sense that On the Market has come full circle, because as we all know, it was set up as a collective, if you like, for the agents, by the agents, and it seems to have come back to that. You're right. I think that the On the Market team were always very approachable and actually likable in the way that they dealt with agents. However, they were always comparing themselves to Rightmove, perhaps to Zoopla as well. They seem to have come away from that and seem to have just got back to how can we best support agents, and promote them.
I think that's right. And look, again, quite frankly, Rightmove is in such a strong position and provides the consumer with such an incredible experience. I would find it very, very hard to imagine if I was going back into agency, David, which I hasten to add I'm not, but if I was to go back into agency, I can't even conceive the idea that my agency wouldn't be on Rightmove. Okay. It's a bit like, as I say, going back to the TV channels. I can't imagine not having BBC as an option on my TV channels. Okay. But the thing is this, I don't just have BBC on my TV options. There are other channels that I choose to watch. And I think what On the Market have done is to, as you say, perhaps reconnect with their initial idea and purpose, which is to really be the agent's portal. Perhaps Rightmove is the consumer's portal more, maybe. And there's plenty of space in that marketplace, for a number to operate. And let's face it, almost on a weekly basis, somebody else announces a new portal of some guys, and many of them have failed.
You use the analogy of BBC One and Channel 4. There are plenty of Channel 5s out there at the moment.
There's plenty of Daves and things like that. Not that I am aware of it, not that I've watched it, but there's stuff out there. And again, if somebody wants to go really niche, then there'll be marketplaces for that. So I feel that what we've got with On the Market is a partner that really, really wants to help agents to perform, to be the best that they can be, and that's what we set up for. Now, if the cynics want to say, "Oh, it's just about the money," well, okay, fine. I'm in business. It's how I make a living. It's what I do. But my purpose, has been consistent for many, many, many years, which is to help, or in fact, I go further, to inspire the people we work with to be the best that they can be. That's why we exist. We inspire people to be the best that they can be.
That has always been, a very consistent mantra coming out of the Property Academy and also the EA Masters. And I think, so last year was my first time ever attending EA Masters. I got out to the Big Smoke and saw it firsthand. And it's interesting because there is a commercial element to it. As you say, everybody's got to eat. Suppliers are there to showcase their wares to the agents. But there was also a very strong focus on almost in an AREC style way. There is some inspiration. There is some learning you can take away from the day. I think that's always been your focus, even in terms of the sort of guest presenters that you've had up. You've chosen people that can add value in some way to the agents and raise the standards. And in that way, it sort of separates itself slightly from some of the other award ceremonies that may be out there in the industry.
Well, we've always had as our driver. It's the title of my weekly blog, but we always have what we call 4I in mind. And 4I stands for information, insight, ideas, and inspiration. And everything we do, we checklist it against those four. We go, okay. And the ideal scenario is to be able to tick all four and say that this article or this podcast or this video or this event or whatever it might be ticks all four. Sometimes, it might tick three of the four, but it needs to tick ideally at least three, ideally all four. So what we do in terms of our selection of the whole event. So if you take the sort of four, there are four components really to the event as well. So the first one is as you mentioned, the suppliers, the exhibition, and what we encourage suppliers to do is to bring new products, new services, new innovations, and to actually launch them on the day. This is a day of new. This is a day of, as Ben says, awesomeness coming to the fore, where we've got a chance to, where suppliers have a chance to showcase their wares. And David, it's one of the reasons why we've deliberately moved the event this year back to September the 21st, because it gives both suppliers and agents in effect, a 3-month opportunity to put into place and to discuss some of these options ready for their next calendar year in terms of 2020. Whereas when we were late November, early December, that window was a very short window. And in fact, a lot of people will have finalized their budgets by then. So it's deliberately designed to enable suppliers to showcase. That's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is the conference. And I feel very confident that nobody else gets close when it comes to the quality of the speakers. I mean, I've seen, you mentioned Simon's at the Guild today. I know they've got some pretty impressive speakers there, but not being funny, people like Seth Godin, people like Stephen Covey, I mean, these are properly big names that we're able to bring. And they're not just big names; they're brilliant brains who are really, really thought-provoking in the truest sense. And again, our lineup for this year we will be announcing, and our goal every year is to top the previous year, and we've got some amazing people that we're going to be announcing for the conference. So we want it to be an event like no other from the perspective of the quality of the speakers and presenters that we have. The third element is the awards. And again, just to, as I said to you off camera, don't mind facing some fast bowling. We often get accused, the only people that go, if you have to buy a ticket to win. What a load of twaddle that is. We announce the winners before we actually sell a ticket. So, there's no, and that's in response to.
So you announce the people that have got into certain categories, but in terms of who the best agent of the year will be, that's still.
Yeah, the trophies we hold back. So, the 17, if you like, overall best small or best medium, the overall winner of winners, we announce that on the day. But you would know before you buy a ticket whether you have been assessed as a gold award winner or not in the best estate agent club before you buy a ticket. And that was directly in response to agents saying, it's a lot of money to come to London. Do I bring the team or not? I want to know whether have I won for lettings or sales, or both or whatever. And so we took all that on board and we said, okay, fine, we'll announce it. Now, of course, the cynics will say, oh, well, you only announce it so they buy tickets. I mean, you can't win, right? You just can't win.
You cannot win. So I'm going to give you some feedback, and this is going to. I've already given you guys this feedback sort of off camera, and you did a very thorough post event survey. The food, which to me, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a natural athlete, Peter. The food was by far the best that I've tasted at all the award ceremonies, and I made sure that I've gone out there and thoroughly tested it all. There is only one recommendation I'd like to make, and it's not about the food, but it's about perhaps a new category of awards. Okay. Because I was called out at the EA Masters as we were milling around, sort of congratulating everybody. The crowd parted, and a lady came across to me, and I'd never met her before, and she said, "You're David Mintz from the Kerfuffle Podcast, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I started to get rather full of myself. And she said, "I'm Katie Griffin, and I have a better podcast than you." And she'd had a few drinks at that stage, so I have to be kind to the lady, but I've since listened to her podcast, and it is amazing. But it got me thinking. There is a great deal, if you were to look at the industry today and perhaps say 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there's a lot of people out there generating content, whether it be agents, whether it be suppliers, but there are some fantastic value-added resources that you can have for free. there's any number of podcasts, and in fact, any variety as well. Some of them are there just to talk business. Some of them are a little bit more playful. I don't know if you've caught any of the stuff that we do, but there's a very eclectic marketplace there. And I feel that these people are helping to also encourage standards to be raised in the industry. There's a lot of sharing of information and resources there going on for free, with the common goal of raising those standards. So can we see a best podcast?
Well, I think it's interesting, David. We on the supplier side, so we included in the EA Masters, of course. Also, I mentioned 3 of the 4 things. And the 4th one really is the whole networking opportunity, which is where agents and suppliers have a chance to network with each other and to get to know each other better. And I think, certainly in this sort of coming out of the pandemic era, hopefully. That's ever more, that's even more important than it has been before. So we run the Supplier Awards. In fact, Kerfuffle have been our sponsor of the Best EA Supplier Guide Awards for the last few years, which has been fantastic because Kerfuffle is the definitive place for agents to find out about which suppliers are most appropriate for them. And I think that I was with Wavy when he. Well, not when he originally cooked up the idea, because I'm just guessing that was in some sort of.
So you're to blame.
Den of iniquity, but when Simon asked me, is there a place for it? Most definitely there is, because there's a lot of confusion, and making sense, out of all the noise is what you guys do, and so therefore, what we do from a supplier perspective is actually we assess supplier against supplier. So people say, well, how can you compare a board manufacturer with a CRM provider with a podcast, let's say, for example, because in effect, a podcast is providing a service. It's a service supplier. And we should include, I think, based on this conversation, we should include in our list of suppliers, those who've got significant podcasts and so we already have a list of over 600 suppliers. Now, unlike others, where you've got, I don't know, best CRM provider, best floor plan provider, best, whatever, and I'm thinking, hang on a second, how many people actually enter and are they competing with? One other, 2 others, or indeed even just themselves? What we do is we compare 600 suppliers, regardless of what they do, whether they're prop tech, whether they're service, whether they're marketing, whatever they do, we compare them. And we do that by asking agents the classic Net Promoter Score question. How likely is it that you would recommend Kerfuffle to a family member, friend, or colleague on a scale of 0 to 10? And why is that? And so we get the agents to vote for their suppliers, or rather rate their suppliers, and then they can vote for them. And in fact, in the last few years, that voting has also been available on the Kerfuffle website as well. So it's had a wider audience to be able to attract more and more agents to rate and assess. So we do this, but I feel that by going really niche and sort of having a best floor plan provider or best podcast, for me it doesn't feel quite right. I'd rather that you compete against the others and get a rating based on the value that you give to agents, regardless of the actual product or service that you are providing. And I know a lot of suppliers now, as with agents, we have the same 3 things that we want to do. We want to reward the good. We want to provide a useful resource, in this case for agents, not for homeowners. And we want to raise the standards of the industry by encouraging and helping suppliers to ever innovate. And if you think about it, David, in terms of the last few years, what has gone on in terms of, I've never seen so much innovation and so much development, so many new products and services, some of which are rubbish, quite frankly, but many of which are brilliant.
It does feel, from a prop tech sense, it feels like the golden age at the moment. There's lots going on. Not all of it's good, but there's some great, what I would applaud, and I think that you've already sort of mentioned it, is collaboration between cross organizations, but also between different businesses. That the pandemic has accelerated a lot of innovation, but it's also encouraged us to be less selfish commercially, if it's for the greater good. And I'm not saying we're all altruistic in this respect, but I think if it's for the greater good, I think most people have got together and decided actually there's more to be gained in working together than there is against each other. So that feels like there is that going on. Let me sort of ask you very quickly, because I'm conscious of your time here, but in terms of the makeup of the EA Masters, and no spoilers, please, because you told me some things off camera, which my lips are sealed, but you are going to shake things up. You're going to take things to that sort of next level. Is it fair to say that the sort of digital events that perhaps you were forced to do because of the pandemic, and it was sensible to do so, but in its second year of digital events, it wasn't as well attended because people were busy? Have we come away from that? Are we to expect more in-person things?
Well, we've made a firm commitment to the hybrid model now. We think that we think it's important to do both. EA Masters will be broadcast online, as well as attend in person. Last year, about 600 people attended online, in addition to the 1,200 who attended in person. And so we're looking to build on that. And indeed, one of the things that we say to people, when they buy tickets, is to say, look, you've got a very, very competitive digital option. If you wanted to, only buy 1 or 2 tickets, you don't have to buy a whole table of 10 or anything like that. If you want to be in person, but have your team join online, you can do that. So we're very much going to continue that. We're going to be announcing in June, David, the winners. And that will be a hybrid, that will be an online only event, and we will be announcing who the winners are. People will be able to check for themselves to see how they're, whether they're in the Best Estate Agent Guide or not. And at that point, we will also make tickets available both to attend in person or to attend digitally. But as I mentioned before, the winners will already have been identified, and therefore there is no influence whether people come or not. In fact, you were there last year. You saw that in a number of categories, including the big ones, the sort of 17 trophies and plaques that we had, that people weren't there. And obviously, we'd love them all to be there.
I accepted a lot of those on their behalf. Yeah, I've never been so touched. But you're right. And that to me was key. That it is that you can still win and stay at home if you have to for whatever reason. And we're not out of the woods COVID wise. I think things are much better, but obviously there are still pockets of it here and there. And it makes sense to have some sort of a digital offering, but we have to be mindful that I think the in-person event, you'll never get the same sort of experience as being there on the front row, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, look, my business is called Estate Agency Events. That's there's a clue in the name, right? And we do events in a estate agency. It sort of does what it says on the tin. Yeah, I know. We took a long time to dream that one up, I can assure you. And back in those days, the URL was relatively easily available as well, so we didn't have to concern ourselves too much about that. So that's the nature of what we do, and there's no question in-person events are fantastic. But that said, I think what we've got to also understand on this is that digital is still relatively new. So if you go to an event, you broadly speaking as a delegate know what to do. And if you're a supplier, you broadly speaking know what to do. Now for a digital event, everyone's a bit sort of, they try to recreate the in-person experience. So how can we get it as close to that as possible? But it's not in person. So that's really hard to do. So I think there's still a big learning curve. And what was really interesting, when we did a survey after the last but one, actually. No, after the last one, sorry. When we did a survey after the 2020, what year are we in? 2020 EA Masters. We asked people, both suppliers and delegates, if you had an option, it was a pretty binary question, and people may challenge the methodology, but we asked, if you had the option, would you prefer a digital event or a physical event? And over a third said they would prefer digital. Now, given the fact that we've only had 2 years effectively of digital events on that scale, certainly in the estate agency industry, I was shocked by that. I expected that number to be much lower. And there are people, of course, who are busy and they've got travel and they've got costs and all the rest of it to consider. And for them, if they're coming purely for the conference, if they're coming purely to get information, if they want to, all our suppliers will have booths online as well, so you can get all the information online. And for some people, that may be a better option. For others, though, it's the networking, it's the celebration, it's being there, it's the stuff that's really hard to create digitally. That sort of spontaneous moment of bumping into somebody and how are you, and and where that leads. And there's so many stories. There's so many stories of how things have happened at our events over the years. Ben Sellers tells me that it was meeting John Cook of what was then eProp, now Nurture, at the EA Masters that triggered a conversation.
One of those sliding doors moments.
It is, and you can't necessarily predict those things. But having done this for over 20 years now, I can say that I don't know what it will be, but I do know that magic happens when people get together. And that's that's one of the things that we do, is to provide this environment for people to get together. So digital, we're all still learning, David. And it was a big, even better if for us. How can we make it better? We delivered on the content. I mean, the quality and the quantity of the conference that we provided, I think nearly everybody would agree is second to none by a mile, absolute mile. But that said, in person remains at the core of what we do, and it will do for as long as I can see, anyway.
I think that we all have, over the past couple of years, it's fair to say that the property market has had a fantastic time compared to other industries. We've come out of it a lot better, and you only have to look around the industry press headlines every morning. Somebody else is being acquired. It's a very acquisitive space at the moment, and traditionally you only get that kind of level of acquisition when the market's good and it's worth buying. So obviously it's a very encouraging sign. And there is a sense to me that people have very short memories, particularly if you're a young negotiator and you've only just come into the business in the last 3 years. If you expect it to always be like this, I feel that some of these sort of education that we need to now start to do and focus on is preparing people for the eventuality of actually having to do a lot more work in the coming years, should things sort of correct itself ever so slightly.
Well, it will do, David. And to quote my good friend and the founder of Romans, Dale Norton, Dale's one of his most famous quotes is, "Every market makes a market." But the bit that he then adds to it, which people often drop off when they quote him, he said, "Every market makes a market, and you need to know which market you're in." Or in actual fact, he said, and you need to know which market you're going into. Because you've got the market today, and then you've got the market forward. Now, some of the crystal ball gazers, quite frankly, should be ashamed of themselves in terms of the rubbish that they peddled in terms of, market's going to fall by 20%, this, that, and the other. And the same people are trotting out the same nonsense now. And it's embarrassing. And you know what? It could be a thing for Kerfuffle. You've given me a suggestion. I'm going to give you one. Maybe do a little bit of a track, maybe like a sort of, facts, fake news track all these people that come up with these percentages of ups and downs, and then just track them against and see how well they do, right? Yeah. Because I tell you what, it was a load of nonsense that was peddled. So I don't get involved in that, because quite frankly, who can predict anything, right? Who can predict the events of
entirely hard to call, especially as you see world events today.
Absolutely. But what we do know, David, is that we know that whatever the market we are in is doing, it's going to change. So it's a case of by in what respect and by how much and when. So it's about looking to anticipate it. Now, what we have at the moment are things and clues and pointers like never before. The amount of data that is available. So, for example, your own website, an estate agent's website, just looking at what number of people are logging on a daily basis, would be a really good indicator if they track just that one metric, just to see what's going on in terms of activity levels. There are clues all around us, and indeed, one of the things that on the market are seeking to do, and we're working with them to do this, and we'll be announcing some new initiatives with them as well. We've got some other really exciting plans to partner with them on, is how do we help agents, with predictors almost of market, or rather not predictors necessarily, a barometer, more of a, what is the direction of travel looking like? What's going to be going on here? And Property Academy is going to be working very closely with On the Market in areas like that, and providing all sorts of leadership coaching and other products. So that's you had a little glimpse there. That's down the road. That'll be in a few weeks' time. We'll be announcing that as well. So yeah, one of the great things, of course, about going to a live event in particular is to be able to interact with so many other people. And over the years, you build a network. Property Academy has been all about building groups and networks of agents to share ideas, but also to share their views. And I have to say, this week I've had 2 of my group meetings. We have 15 members in each of our groups. And the big question in January when we last met was all about stock levels. And it was, oh my gosh, there's no stock. It's really, really tough. I have to say, based on just the conversations of the last 2 weeks, that seems to be correcting itself. There are still agents, crying out for stock, and I get that. But there were a lot more this time around saying, actually, it's begun to pick up a bit. And therefore, is that another indicator that maybe the market is beginning to turn? I don't know. All I do know is agents need to be able to perform in every market. And
it doesn't pay to make predictions, but I know some people grab some great headlines with that. But I think the key is, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. You've got to stay agile. You've got to stay on your toes. And I think that particularly it is the younger contingent that I talk to and encourage them to sort of really get as much training in as they can. Learn from others. There's a wealth of experience out there, and you will meet some of those firsthand at conferences as well. You're going to need everything you can get if conditions do change.
Totally. And David, we have a Future Leaders Group. One of our products, we call it the Future Leaders Group, and it typically comprises younger agents in their sort of 20s and 30s. These typically are people who are sort of branch managers, ready to take on more responsibility, or they're running departments and so on and so forth. And it's an absolute joy to work with them, because I tell you now, based on that alone, the future of this industry is in really good hands. There's some amazing talent, coming through the ranks, and some really, really bright young people who I find really exciting to work with. And what we're coaching them to do, because I don't know about you, but I never had any leadership coaching. I learned on the job. That was how I learned. To be able to equip these younger people with some sort of tools and strategies as to how to perform at their very best is really, really exciting. So one of the things is that we work with them on is how to read a marketplace. What would you go about? How would you go about assessing it? And then how can you make sure that you are relevant and that your proposition is appropriate for that marketplace? Quite frankly, in the last few months, advising people, we sell properties within X days. So what?
Yeah,
that's
100%.
But that may well be it will be a feature of a future market, where suddenly actually that really is of value and importance to the consumer, because other people don't sell it within that time frame. So they've got to understand that they always need to have a competitive advantage. They need to have a compelling proposition, and we help them to understand what theirs is and to craft it and to be able to communicate it really effectively. So it's just one of the things that we do.
Excellent. Some exciting things to look forward to, but certainly some exciting things to look forward to from the EA Masters 2022. And it sounds like it's going to be great. Wish you a lot of luck with that, Peter. Thank you for giving your time this morning.
Well, David, I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, as always, for having me. And I look forward to seeing you at your second EA Masters on September the 21st, 2022.
I'll be there. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers, David. Thanks, everyone.